Okay, in this video I'm going to let you know what you shouldn't do, but conversely what you should do, and generally give you some advice that's going to help you have a better time here in Romania. If you come with an open mind but an educated mind, you're going to have a better time here. Okay, let's get started. First but really important tip, bring an umbrella and a coat. You currently see me under this lovely grapevine outside my Airbnb because it's raining yet again. And it's June, but hey, that's the way of things here. This may sound a little silly, but don't get too wrapped up in the whole Dracula thing. Just because you're in Romania and maybe you're in Transylvania doesn't mean that local people actually believe in this. Of course, like anywhere in the world, in the Middle Ages there are all kind of myths, but that doesn't mean the local people are carrying around stakes now. Yeah, there's the history of Vlad the Impaler, who was fairly bloodthirsty, but he's more a local hero than a vampire. There's also a good chance you're going to be visiting the beautiful countryside of Transylvania, maybe the castles like Bran Castle, and you're going to see all sorts of tourist souvenirs, Dracula-themed souvenirs. But can you blame the enterprising locals for selling these things? Of course you can't, it's going to happen. And that said, certainly don't miss out on Transylvania. It is absolutely stunning. Make sure you don't just stay in the cities in the time there, explore the towns, really get to see the history, you won't regret it. And now on another note, don't assume that Romanians can speak Russian. Okay, it's kind of relatively close, but it's simply not the way. School children here learn a combination of English, French or German. So Russian's hardly spoken, it's more likely they'll speak one of these other languages. But then on that note as well, don't expect everyone to speak English, certainly in the older generations. And don't confuse Romania with the surrounding countries as well. It was never part of the former Yugoslavia, and it's not a Slovak nation either, it's its own country. Now, as a general rule in life, I tend to follow the old saying of never discuss politics or religion. And certainly that holds true for religion here. It can really be a sensitive topic. But generally Romanians don't have a problem with politics, and they can quite enjoy conversation on that. However, at the same time, it's probably best to avoid conversation on the communist past. And also, don't make a big deal about corruption here. Many Romanians are disappointed by the way their country's portrayed in the media about this. And as a tourist, you're unlikely to see it anyway. And don't confuse the Romanians and Roma people. They're two separate ethnic groups. It's probably best to avoid discussion on this because it can be sensitive, the relationship between the two. Now let's move on to some practicalities around money. Don't assume that you have to pay in cash, but it is well worth carrying some around if you need it. And cash is still commonly used for transactions here. The card hasn't taken over here yet, and particularly in smaller places it can really come in handy where they might not be so up to date with electronic payments. It also can be really handy for tipping. And when you do need to get cash, ATMs are readily available, particularly in the cities and towns. You'll see them everywhere, absolutely no problem there. But card payments are certainly commonly used across Romania. Visa and MasterCard are taken in a lot of places like restaurants, hotels, shops, this kind of thing. And also contactless payment is really picking up here. You can use it in a lot of places. In fact, it's just commonplace in a lot of places. They'll ask, do you want cash or card? And even in buses now, in the bigger places like in Cluj and Bucharest, you can pay with contactless just on the bus inside. Trains here are a great way to enjoy the beautiful scenery, particularly in routes like Brașov to Bucharest, where you go through the Carpathian Mountains. However, the trains are pretty old, they're not very well serviced, and the infrastructure isn't really very well maintained. However, they are cheap, and they do go on some pretty useful routes, so you really should end up taking them. There certainly are delays and cancellations, so it can be better, rather than booking in advance online, just to show up at the station, buy your ticket there before the journey, but make sure you've got enough time there, about half an hour before the train leaves at least, just to make sure that you do actually get on the train that you want. And if you're driving, don't expect great roads. The views can be breathtaking, but the roads won't match the views, certainly. There can be potholes, they can be a bit rough, and on national routes, all the traffic will be condensed into one lane, so progress can be pretty slow. Now, buses and coaches are also an option, of course, and probably an option you'll have to take if you're not driving to get around the country, but you're going to have the same problem with the roads, of course, just a little bit slower. It will be slow progress, so don't bank on getting anywhere fast. Factor in the time. For travelling within the towns and cities, if you're taking a taxi, then do be alert, as you probably should anywhere. Make sure you know where you're going, you are going the right direction. Also, make sure the label on the side of the taxi, the pricing there actually reflects what you see that you're paying, just so that you don't get taken advantage of there. Now, another option, at least in the bigger places, is Uber or things like this, so that could be worth it just to avoid any of that kind of hassle. There's a useful network of buses in the towns and cities, sometimes also trams as well, and Bucharest even has a limited metro system. Now the way you pay for these depends where you are, it can change, so check the latest online just to find out where you're going. Now the food is pretty good here, you should definitely enjoy it whenever you can. The traditional food's great, it's reasonably priced too, although the prices are rising a bit in recent years. And there's good international food as well and quite inventive cuisine, particularly in the bigger cities. Now don't say no if you're offered food and drink in a social setting. Romanians can be very generous and very proud of their food and would consider it impolite to not have their guests happy with what they're giving. So absolutely enjoy it and do be thankful for it because they're wonderful when it comes to this. Now a common question always is, can you drink the tap water? And yes you can, don't worry about drinking the tap water here, it is absolutely fine for your health. However, it is quite heavily chlorinated here, and also not all cities and towns are equal, so some may be more so than others. So you may want to choose to drink bottled water, it's really personal preference there. Now if you do choose bottled water, it certainly is cheap and readily accessible. Now if you're in a restaurant, tipping is appreciated but not mandatory. Typically about 10% is the norm, like in a lot of places. And sometimes you'll find the service charge is added to the bill automatically, so do check to make sure of that. And as I say earlier, it can be useful just to actually carry around some cash, some small change just for the tips. Now as far as safety goes, and this is pretty common for loads of countries really, but don't flash your valuables. There is petty theft and pickpocketing here, so don't give them the chance to start with. And also, there's some pretty big roads around here, particularly in the cities like Bucharest and Cluj. It can take a long time to cross them and you can get quite bored waiting, to be perfectly honest. But the trouble is, some of the cars here, they think they're Formula 1 drivers. They go really, really fast, so do be careful there. And that's pretty much the advice I have on what not to do if you're visiting Romania. Now you're going to have a great time here. It's a fascinating country. There's so much beauty. Just travel around and absolutely enjoy it. Plan your trip and have a great time. Hope to see you next time.